Today on Alex Nautos, we're out here taking a look at the 2015 RAM ProMaster City. This is known in other world markets essentially as the Fiat Doblo. This is more, however, than just the RAM version of that Fiat Doblo because the vehicle has been completely redesigned for the North American market. Large percentage of the parts have been changed, especially for American consumption. The model we're taking a look at right here in the white is sort of the commercial box van. We don't have any seats in the back. This is the cargo version. And the version we're taking a look at right over here is the passenger version. It does seat 5, not 7, like you'll see in some of the competition. Very logically, since Chrysler still sells the Caravan as well as the Town & Country, they're not calling this a minivan. Instead, they're calling it a city-focused cargo vehicle. Competition for the ProMaster City can be found in the likes of the Nissan NV200, which is their small city-based cargo van, as well as the Chevy City Express, which is really just an NV200 with a Chevy logo stuck on the front, as well as the short and long wheelbase versions of that Ford Transit Connect. The front end varies a little bit depending on the trim level that you get. This is the base tradesman version. As you can see, we get this black front bumper, no fog lights right down here. The version we're taking a look at over here on my right, which is this red color, this one has the up-level option packages, which means you get this body-colored bumper as well as fog lights right down there. At 186 inches long, this slots right between the Ford Transit Connect short wheelbase and long wheelbase in overall size. As far as the Chrysler stable goes, this is significantly shorter than the full-size ProMaster, of course, but it's also 6 inches shorter than the Dodge Caravan. Speaking of the Caravan, the Ram CV, which has been Ram's small cargo vehicle for the longest time based on the Caravan, is actually going to be discontinued for the 2016 model year. This vehicle and the Ram CV will sell side by side for 2015, then after that, the CV will be gone. The ProMaster City is a pretty tall vehicle, and it's really obvious right back here. It makes it an awful lot easier to load taller cargo in the back. We have this split 60/40 folding rear door. This is the 60 side over here. It has the single windshield wiper in the rear, and this is the 40 side right over here. Now you can open the 60 side independently of the 40 side and leave it open. So if you did put longer items in the vehicle, you could leave this open, and it does latch in this position. We can extend it a little bit further. Hopefully we don't hit this other vehicle right there, almost to 180 degrees from the back. Now, one thing worth noting is that you cannot close this 60 portion and have it latch in place right like that. So the side to leave latched is this 40% side. This fully loaded model we're taking a look at right here has the optional backup camera on this side and optional parking sensors right down here. If you feel like towing, you'll find this 2-inch receiver available on the ProMaster City. We also have a 4 and a 7-pin wiring harness right over here on this side. While there are a wide variety of engine and transmission options for the Fiat Doblo in Europe, in the US, the ProMaster City only has one engine and transmission option. It is this 2.4-liter 4-cylinder engine with Fiat's multi-air system in it. It produces 178 horsepower and 174 pound-feet of torque, and it's mated exclusively to a ZF 9-speed automatic transmission. Thanks to the wide gear ratio spread from that 9-speed automatic transmission, fuel economy ranges from 21 miles per gallon city to 29 highway, giving you a combined rating of 24 miles per gallon. If you plan on towing with your ProMaster, towing does come in at a surprisingly stout 2,000 pounds, which is suitable to tow something like this small tractor that's on the back of the ProMaster right here. Admittedly, there's not a whole lot of competition in this segment, but I'm going to give these front seats 10 out of 10 points. We have a tilt telescopic steering column with a decent range of motion, something that you don't actually find in the larger ProMaster. We also have a manually adjustable driver's seat. It is adjustable for height as well as forward, backward. We have an adjustable lumbar support. It's a small knob right here on the seat back, and the adjustment for reclining the seat is a larger knob right here on the seat back. The rear seats are fairly comfortable. We don't have a great deal of legroom back here. However, we do have an extraordinarily generous amount of headroom. I have about 7 inches above me. We don't have too much of a driveline hump in the middle. There's a very small one. But this middle seat is fairly comfortable. We get a middle headrest that does move up far enough that it doesn't hit me strangely in the back. If I move on over to the driver's side, the seat was adjusted for me at 6 feet tall, and my knees are touching the seat back. Getting in and out of the rear is very easy thanks to a sliding door, and if I close that, you'll notice that we do have a rear window that rolls almost completely down. As you'd expect from any commercial vehicle, the front doors are made out of easy-to-clean, hard-touch plastics. If we look towards the bottom of this door, we actually find a large storage cubby right there with 2 bottle holders instead of just 1. On the front doors, you'll notice some interesting Europeanisms about the ProMaster City because, of course, this is based on the Fiat Doblo. We have the same door handles and door locks. This is actually a combination door release and door lock. You push down to lock the door, you pull up, this is the unlock position. If you want to actually open the door, you pull further up and that actually opens the door. It's not possible to lock the door while the door is opened to help keep you from locking your keys in the vehicle. Moving over to the dashboard, we have a lockable, moderately sized glove box. It is this drop-down bin style. We can fit a small tablet computer right in there very easily. We have some additional storage located right above the glove compartment and a large air vent to either side. Taking a quick overview look of the inside of the ProMaster, you can see this is definitely a European-styled vehicle. It really doesn't look like any of the other American Chrysler lineup. Taking a closer look at the center of the dashboard, we have the optional 5-inch Uconnect system in our particular model with navigation. Direct access buttons right there across the bottom, volume knob on the left, tune and browse knob on the right. Although this looks very much like the larger Uconnect that you'll find in other Chrysler and Ram vehicles, this is actually based on Microsoft's operating system rather than QNX. If we move out, you'll notice that it is housed in a large binnacle right there, front and center. We have additional buttons right down there below, fog lamps, rear defroster, and the menu system for the trip computer. Even though the 5-inch Uconnect system runs on a different operating system than the larger Uconnects, it looks very, very similar. Right here, we're on the satellite radio. Pressing that radio button, you can transfer to AM or FM. We have a full media interface, full USB and iPod integration. Navigation is by TomTom in this system. We have a fairly decent map. System is a little bit slower to load than some of the larger systems. We also have a full-featured Bluetooth phone interface. We don't have a phone connected right now, of course. And if we click on the More button, we'll find some additional things like the trip computer available right here in this screen. You'll also have a compass and a clock. Mute buttons right over here. We can turn the screen on and off, and then we can change certain system and vehicle settings right over here on the right side by pressing this gear button right over here. You can see display, voice, safety assistance, etc. We do have complete voice commands in the system, very much like the larger version of Chrysler's Uconnect. Continuing down the dashboard, we have a single-zone manual climate control. And you'll find the auxiliary input and USB input for that Uconnect system right there. We have a very traditional shifter with a manual mode. It's all the way down and over to the left. Continuing our way down that dashboard, we do have one cup holder right there. It is very large, followed by 2 power outlets. And then if we look further down between the rear seats, you'll notice we have that other cup holder right there at the back. Moving up to the ceiling, we have some additional storage right there above the sun visors all the way across the front. The instrument cluster is a basic, very European-styled instrument cluster. We get our speedometer right over here, tachometer on the right, engine temperature and fuel level with a multifunction trip computer right there in the middle. The trip computer is controlled via a stalk on the side of the steering column as well as some buttons on the dashboard. See, we can cycle through fuel economy, average speed, travel time, etc. The ProMaster City uses a unique steering wheel. It definitely looks like a Fiat steering wheel, so it is somewhat familiar if you drive a Fiat 500 or 500L. Cruise control buttons over here on this side, phone hang-up pickup button, voice command button, and mute button. You'll find the radio controls on the back of the steering wheel, volume up, down on this side, track forward and backward on this side. When it comes to capability, the ProMaster CV ekes out a slight win over the competition. We have 1,883 pounds maximum load capacity in the back. Keep in mind that does include your driver, of course, so that will reduce your cargo capacity if you have a driver and a front passenger in the vehicle. That's the same across the board in every vehicle's rated maximum load. Maximum cargo length is determined by the options in the particular van you're looking at. So if you get this fixed partition that is optional in the ProMaster City, kind of a nice touch, it does limit your maximum cargo length. Absolute maximum length in any of the vehicles comes in at 87.2 inches. You'll notice that's a little bit shy of 8 feet long. You can fit 4x8 things into the ProMaster City, but they will hang out the back. You'd have to leave those back doors open. You'll find the maximum cargo width right here across the 2 sliding doors. That comes in at 60.4 inches wide. Cargo width between the wheel wells is a snug 48.4 inches, but that does mean you can fit 4-foot wide items right here between this wheel well and the one on the other side. Maximum cargo height comes in at 51.8 inches tall, which means you could fit a 4-foot by 7-foot by 4-foot item very easily in the back of the ProMaster City. When it comes to carrying the maximum cubic feet of stuff, the ProMaster City scores very well in comparison with the NV200 and the Ford Transit Connect. This comes in at 131.7 cubic feet of widgets. While we're talking about comparisons, you should know that this is considerably lower than your average half-ton commercial van. So something like a Chevy Express 1500 series or a Ford E150, they'll hold about 240 cubic feet of things. Ram's own large ProMaster, that'd be the ProMaster full-size vehicle, is considerably larger than this. Helping you secure your cargo in the load area are 6 D-rings positioned right there on the floor of the cargo area. The cargo-only models get a little bit of additional storage space right there on the left of the rear. There is not a corresponding cubby on the right, however. Although you can fit 7-foot items in the cargo version from that front seat back all the way to the rear doors, you can't do that in the 5-passenger version. We have about 4 feet behind this second row seat when it's in place, and we have about 18 inches more if you fold the second row up like we have right over here. The passenger version is a little bit different in the back than the cargo version because we get these little indentations right here, and right above there where you can install an optional tonneau cover in the back. We have some storage cubbies right here, and we have rear speakers. that takes up a little bit of the cargo room, and we also have a headliner that goes all the way to the back in the cargo area of the vehicle. Still, we have an awful lot more room right back here in the cargo area of the passenger version than you'll find in anything along the lines of a hatchback or even some of those square hatchbacks like a Kia Soul or a Nissan Cube. If you're wondering where the spare tire is located, it would actually be right under the vehicle, right behind that bumper portion right there. Spare tires are optional in the ProMaster City. By default, you just get a tire inflator kit. Very much like the Jeep Cherokee and the Chrysler 200, the biggest thing you'll notice about the ProMaster City out on the road is this 9-speed automatic transmission. That's because we have a very low first gear and a very tall 9th gear. That low first gear gives you excellent acceleration. It's very easy to spin your tires off the line in this 2.4-liter equipped model, and I would suspect it runs faster 0 to 60 than the Transit Connect or the Nissan NV by a decent margin. I don't have all of my testing equipment with me this week because I'm not at home testing this vehicle, but that's my suspicion. I'll confirm it when I do get one for a week on my own. The 9-speed automatic transmission has a serious improvement in highway fuel economy, especially high-speed highway fuel economy, because that 9th gear is very, very tall. It means this engine is practically loafing along just above idle when you're going about 70-75 miles an hour or so. What that means to you is if you live in an area with high speed limits, 70, 75, even 80 miles an hour, you'll get considerably better fuel economy in this vehicle than in the competition, thanks to that very tall gearing in 9th gear. Thanks to an independent rear suspension, the ProMaster City definitely handles winding mountain roads a little bit better than the competition. It's really noticeable when you compare this to the Nissan NV200, which does use a solid axle in the back. The solid axles normally give you better load capacity, but we actually have a slightly higher load capacity in the ProMaster City than that NV200. That means if you're looking at the ProMaster City, especially in the Wagon version that we're driving right now as an alternative to your average minivan or your average hatchback, because you do have an awful lot more cargo room back there than in something like a Kia Soul or any of those other boxy hatchbacks that are out there, this will actually drive more like a regular passenger car than any of those other small van options out there. I should mention that this 9-speed automatic transmission in the ProMaster City behaves very much like all the other 9-speed applications that we've seen out there. This is exactly the same transmission that you'll find under the hood of the Acura TLX with the V6 engine, the Chrysler 200, the Jeep Cherokee, the Jeep Renegade that's coming up very soon, as well as something like a Range Rover Evoque. It shifts very, very much the same as all those other ones. As you're going from first gear on up to 9th gear, there are going to be 2 shifts that feel a little bit different than your average automatic transmission. That's just because of the design of this 9-speed automatic. I don't find it bad by any stretch. I go into that in a little bit more detail in the Chrysler 200 review, so if you want to know more about this 9-speed automatic, go ahead and click on over to that review. As you'd expect from any cargo van, we have a little bit more road noise back there than you'd find in your average hatchback. This is very similar to the Transit Connect as well as the Nissan NV. Chrysler tells us that there are no plans at present to bring a small diesel engine to the United States market. However, that may change. So if you're after a diesel engine, be sure and email Chrysler about it and tell them you'd like to see a small vehicle like this with one of those small European diesels stuffed under the hood. The ProMaster City really excels in residential and inner city areas because this is much easier to park than a full-size van, obviously, but it's also easier to park than your average minivan thanks to it being shorter. Visibility is very good if you get the optional windows in the back and in the sides. It's definitely an option that I would recommend. If, however, you don't like the idea of glass in the back, or you're putting shelves back there, or you have the solid partition that goes right about here in the vehicle, visibility is still reasonably good for a commercial vehicle. We have blind spot mirrors on the outside on these large side view mirrors. We also have an available backup camera nestled right into the dash, integrated into this 5-inch touchscreen. Overall, road manners are definitely a slight step above the Ford Transit Connect and a bit of a larger step above the Nissan NV200. The NV200 is probably the most rough around the edges. Those road manners also translate to the Chevy City Express because there really is very little difference between the NV200 and the Chevy City Express other than the Chevy logo right on the front. So there really wasn't anything done as far as suspension, drivetrain, or other tuning to that vehicle to make it a Chevy. Interestingly enough, this vehicle also has a true manual mode. When you put the transmission in the manual transmission mode, it'll actually hang out in that gear until you shift it. So it'll go right up to the red line and just hang out there until you shift it on your own. It's a little bit unusual for a commercial vehicle like this, but it is an awful lot of fun. Pricing for the 2015 model year starts at $23,130 for the base tradesman version that we took a look at earlier. That's the white van with no windows in the back. If you want the SLT model, that is set you back $24,655. The SLT version starts just over $25,000 for the 5-passenger wagon, and if you load your 5-passenger wagon all the way up, it will end up just under $30,000. This is a small segment, so competition is logically limited. The Ford Transit Connect starts at $22,330 for the XL model in the short wheelbase form. That gives you less interior space than the ProMaster right over here in the red. So the long wheelbase version of the Transit Connect is probably what you want to compare to. That's a little bit more expensive than the ProMaster City at $23,330. Now the Transit Connect has optional 5 or 7 passenger seating, so if you're looking at this as a minivan alternative that's a little bit more compact on the outside, the Transit Connect is probably going to be the better option for you, unless you only need to seat 5, but you have the need for that extra luggage space. Nissan's NV over here in the blue is considerably less expensive at $20,200. However, it's also notably smaller than the ProMaster City. Chevy's City Express, which is very similar to the NV200, is a few $1,000s more expensive than the Nissan version. You don't really get any additional feature content in the Chevy version at that base price. Some important things to keep in mind is that the NV200 is a little bit smaller. It's not quite as practical in the back as the ProMaster City or the Ford Transit Connect. It also has a CVT, and while I generally like CVTs, the CVT in the NV200 doesn't have a very low first ratio. So getting off on steep hills or steep inclines is a little bit tricky with the CVT-equipped NV200. You don't have that same problem in the Transit Connect or in the ProMaster City. The ProMaster City does get excellent fuel economy when you compare it to the Ford Transit Connect, however, because of that 9-speed automatic transmission versus the 6-speed that you find right over here in the Ford. I personally think that the Ford Transit Connect's interior and the front end are the most attractive in this bunch, but there's no doubting that the ProMaster City is the most practical when it comes to actually hauling cargo. Whether you're looking at the ProMaster City Cargo right here or the Wagon version behind it in the various colors, the ProMaster City makes a very good argument for itself in this growing small van segment. Of course, if passenger capacity really is your thing, then a Grand Caravan or a Town & Country will probably be the better vehicle for you. If, however, you're after the maximum in cargo capacity right back here, then you'll probably want the ProMaster City. It's important to keep in mind when you take a look at vehicles like this that a larger van is actually not going to be very much more expensive. So a full-size ProMaster is going to be a few $1,000s more than this. Something like a Chevy Express is going to be only a few $1,000s more than this, probably about the same price after you see those extreme discounts on General Motors' side. However, of course, you're going to get considerably worse fuel economy in that Chevy Express. So operational costs are going to be much, much higher. You're probably going to get in the teens fuel economy, whereas you're going to get solid low 20s in this ProMaster City. Of course, if you do a lot of highway driving, you'll get even better fuel economy in the ProMaster City versus something like that Chevy Express. 29 miles per gallon was absolutely no problem in this vehicle, especially if you go at higher speeds, because the ZF 9-speed automatic transmission seriously improves fuel economy over about 75 miles an hour or so. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. If you want to know more about the ProMaster City, if you want a complete review on it, let me know down there in the comments section down below. Also, tell me what you think about Chrysler's latest small vehicle. Go ahead and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of my latest videos. Go ahead and find me over at facebook.com/AlexNautos, over at Twitter as AlexNautos, and you can always email your questions to alex@alexandautos.com. I'll see you next week.